Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faerie Conclave. This is episode 87. I'm your host, Alec. My pronouns are he, him. And today I'm super excited to have an extra special guest on with me. It's Anna. How are you doing today, Anna?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I wanted to say that I appreciated you at the Magic Summit for pulling me into the first game of Commander that I played at the weekend.
You were my first game too.
Yes. Okay, that's really cute. Yeah, it was awesome. It was very overwhelming when I first got there and I didn't know where to go. And you were just like, hey, let's sit down and play a Creator Clash game of Commander. And I was like, yep, okay, I can do that.
And it was such a good game.
It was. Yeah, we were able to play with we all had precons, and two of us, I think, did you have one of the new precons?
I did. I played with the Urza precon.
Nice. Yeah. And I remember the new ones kind of wrecked. They were very strong, like very quickly. And yeah, it was a really fun game.
It was a good game. I feel like one reason I love Commander so much, and it's probably my favorite format, is because of how social Commander games can be. And I think it started the whole weekend off on a good note that we had just a killer pod, and it was really fun. Yeah,
definitely. I went there like not knowing anybody pretty much. Like I knew a lot of people online, of course, but yeah, it was cool to, like, that first game I met you, and then we were playing with Sean, who used to work at one of my local game stores, so I'd kind of seen him around, and it was really good. It was kind of like, it was a great way to kick off the weekend, and so I had a really good time. And also your cosplays all weekend looked fantastic. So I didn't introduce you super well yet, but you're a cosplayer and you do a lot of Magic content on YouTube and on Twitter and other places. And that's probably just like scratching the surface. So if you could go ahead and take it away and introduce yourself a little bit more, I would love that.
Sure, that was a pretty good introduction, but my name's Anna Margaret. I go by It's Anna Margaret everywhere on the internet. I work full-time as a cosplayer and character actress, and so I'm frequently dressed as my favorite characters from media or just original characters I designed myself. I have recently gotten more into video making, but I love photography, and I fell into Magic. I fell into this obsession probably about a year and a half ago. So it's more recent than cosplay, but I think it's quickly become a core pillar of my personality. And so I do a lot of Magic cosplay and a lot of Magic things.
I love it. Yeah, Magic is like, I feel like it's set up so well for cosplay just because there's so many different characters that come out so often that have such good looks that translate super well to cosplay. And yeah, it's something I loved about it, that I feel like it's open to be able to cosplay Magic stuff for anybody who wants to.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like something that makes one of the reasons I'm so into Magic is because the art is just so beautiful and they have like such cool lore around the characters. And I do think it is a really friendly cosplay community. I think sometimes different cosplay communities can feel really cliquey. And what's so crazy about the Magic cosplay community is everyone's just the nicest people. And everyone's like, yay, more cosplayers. And it's just so encouraging and friendly.
It's true. Yeah, I could definitely see that from the outside. I feel like all of the cosplayers were just like always offering each other snacks and hanging out. And and it was really cool to see. So I love that entire side of Magic, which is one that I don't like, just me when I play with my play group or on Spell Table or whatever. I feel like I don't get to see that side too often. So yeah, that was something I really liked from going to the summit, was seeing all the cosplayers in person and being able to take pictures with them and interact with them. It was really cool. So I was happy that we ran into each other right at the start.
Me too. It was fortuitous.
Yes, definitely. Cool. And I have you on this episode today to interview you about one of your Commander decks, which is always one of my favorite things to do. One, because Commander is fun and I like to talk about it, but also because I feel like when you ask people questions about their Commander decks, it's people put so much of their heart and soul into their decks that you really get like a really personal experience from somebody talking about one of their decks. So I'm super looking forward to that. But before we get into it, let's do our community spotlight for the episode, which today was brought forth by you, Anna Margaret. So could you please introduce us to the community spotlight today?
Yeah, today we're going to spotlight Family the Gathering. And so I first met this family when I attended Magic 30 in Las Vegas. And what immediately drew me to them is that there were these two kids in just the most adorable cosplay. The little girl Stella was dressed as Liliana, and the boy Bo was also dressed in cosplay as Jace. And I was chatting with their mom, and I was just blown away by how kind all four of them were. The mom made their cosplays, the dad did photography, and all four of them love to play Magic, and they love to play together as a family. And so I've now been to two different conventions with them. I saw them at Magic 30 and then again at DreamHack Atlanta. And I was completely blown away by how kind they were, how friendly all four of them were, how much they supported people in the Magic community. They all attended the cosplay contests and took videos and photos of the people competing, even if they didn't know them super well. They would stop cosplayers on the floor to take pictures and just really celebrate the cosplayers and people in the Magic community. I think they are some of the sweetest people.
That's incredible. That's exactly why we do the community spotlight, because I had not been following or heard of Family the Gathering until just now, and now I'm a little bit obsessed with all of them because that's just like all of that is such good vibes. And also I have tried and failed to get my family interested in Magic, so no! I love to see like a whole family playing Magic together. Is just, that's so cool to see. I love that. And also just like contributing to not just like the Magic community at events and stuff, but also the like cosplayers specifically. I think that's something we just need more of. So yeah, I love that. Thank you so much.
It's inspiring. I want to rope my kids to get into Magic someday.
That's what they're there for, right? You're trying to get your play group all filled out so you can
I know.
Play anytime.
I made a promise myself that I wouldn't push my hobbies onto my kids, but I think that if my kids just serendipitously like the same things as me, it would be really cool. So we're gonna gently expose them to it, and hopefully they get as into it as I do.
I love it. Yeah, just have it around. It's like, it's always an option. You want to hop into this Commander game, totally up to you.
Exactly.
I love it. That's good. Okay, sweet. Let's get into the interview for today. So I'll kick things off with our first question, which is, who is the commander that we're going to be talking about, and what inspired you to build this deck in the first place?
All right. So my commander is Giada, Font of Hope. And it's actually kind of funny because I love angels, and I just thought they were so cool. And so actually the very first commander deck I ever made was an angel faction deck. The commander was Karametra, God of Harvest. And so it was white-green, and it basically just had lots of angels. And I wanted to have just only angels, and I wanted to have an angel commander, but none of them had really spoken to me until New Capenna came out. And I think New Capenna is one of the reasons I really got super into Magic, because I loved the soundtrack, and I've done swing dancing since I was a teenager. And so the whole vibe of like 20s mobsters was like exactly what I was into. And so I listened to the soundtrack, I saw the new cards in New Capenna, and I saw Giada, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need a Giada deck. And so actually, as soon as I got the Giada card, I took apart my other deck. But then I was in this awkward situation where previously, like, my first commander deck had been 2 colors. And so even though I took all of the angels I could from that deck to put into the Giada deck, I didn't quite have enough to finish that deck. And so then I just had 2 unfinished decks in front of me. And I was so sad. I was like, oh no, I destroyed my first ever commander deck I built to have a not finished deck. And so I was miserable about it. I was so sad. But then I went to bed, and then I woke up the next morning, and I got the rest of the things I needed to finish this deck. And now it's like my favorite deck. And so so it's kind of fun. It has pieces of the very first deck I built, and it also just thematically, I'm so into it. And so I think that's one reason why I built this deck.
I love it. Yeah, it's really cool to hear about what kind of like got people into Magic more deeply. And I love hearing about what kind of like people's first sets were. And New Capenna is such a unique one that I know a lot of people were excited about because the vibe is so different from your like average kind of like high fantasy style Magic set. Like 20s Mobsters is so interesting, and
I love it.
Yeah, and so I love to hear that there are people like you that got into it because of that aesthetic being something you're interested in.
I should say, full disclosure, I had played Magic a little bit before. I started around Crimson Vow. That's kind of when, so my friends had brought me a pre-con. They bought me one of the Strixhaven pre-cons, and we played, and I loved board games, so it was a quick descent into loving Magic. But also the trailer for Crimson Vow, I have to credit that as something that made me like, oh, maybe I would like this game. And so obviously I cosplayed Olivia Crimson Bride because I'm like, oh my gosh, do I want to be her or marry her? And so, but I think that the art and the soundtracks and the music and that's really what pulled me into Magic. And so I liked the Kamigawa soundtrack a lot, but the New Capenna soundtrack, like I listen to Apple Music, not Spotify, but if I did, it'd be on my recapped for the year.
That's so cool too, because I know a lot of people who they don't listen to the soundtrack or watch the trailers, and it's always something that I will do when a new set comes out because I think it's exciting, and the Crimson Vow one was especially cool. I also remember the War of the Spark trailer was one of the like most clever trailer designs. It was like in reverse for the first half. And yeah, I don't know. Things like that I think are totally external and like don't impact the cards at all, which a lot of people focus on. So yeah, it's really cool to see that people are like attracted to this game because of things like that a lot of enfranchised players who've been playing forever might not think about. So yeah, I love that you brought that up so that we could kind of like appreciate that does get people into the game, and that's what we're here for, is for getting more people into the game.
Well, yeah, and I think that you're kind of touching on something that I think is so interesting too, that Magic, the universes of Magic are so big, and really the IP is so big. I bought some of the comics and they're phenomenal. The fact that there's like stories and soundtracks, lore, but then also such a depth of strategy. I think that's why it's such a cool hobby, because it's so many things.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of cosplay in that way, because I think cosplay is kind of just a combination of a bunch of different hobbies. Like, oh yeah, you want to sew and paint and build armor and do photography and makeup and hairstyling. And so it's just kind of like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I have a partner who bounces around a lot of different craft and like art type hobbies. And, has done some sewing, has done some different types of fabric related things. And all of it's really cool. And I love to see and think about how cosplay is kind of a combination of like you said, like 6 different little hobbies all together into one final product. Yeah, that's really cool.
No, that's super cool that they have a bunch of fun art hobbies.
Yeah,
I collect hobbies. I'm super bad at just picking one thing. It's like I have a whole collection of them. So anything that can have like encompass a lot of my interests will probably hold my interest for longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm kind of the opposite. I have like kind of joke about it, but I have 2 hobbies right now. But yeah, when you kind of get into it, it's like getting into Magic is more than just like playing Magic. Like there's the whole social thing, and of course I'm doing it like a podcast now, so I'm kind of expanded into that. It's interesting. I think it's hobbies are just kind of like why we're here and why I like to look forward to playing Magic on Wednesdays, and I don't really know exactly where this train of thought is going, but thank you for giving us some insight into what it's like to like set up and prepare for cosplays.
Yeah, I mean, of course. And also I think it's really cool that Magic can be something that people can look forward to and have a way to connect with other people. And connect through a shared interest and a shared passion. So I think that's really, really cool.
It's true. And I haven't broken it down at all from the summit, but Magic Summit was the first like Magic event I participated in, and I feel like I have like 40 new best friends after going to that. Like so many people were just so fun to hang out with. And
I love that. Oh my gosh, I think conventions are the best for bringing people together. And it's actually really interesting with Magic. So I've gone to conventions my whole life. I have a picture of me when I'm like 6 months old and I'm being held by someone who's dressed in Klingon cosplay because my parents had brought me to a Star Trek convention as like a newborn. And so I've attended conventions forever. But like I said, I just got into Magic pretty recently during the pandemic. And so I only played Magic with my immediate family and close friends until I was invited as a cosplay guest to a Magic convention. And I remember walking in and being like, wow, I'm about to play my first game with strangers. And it was initially really scary. And I think that what was so cool is I left that convention feeling like every game I played with friends. And I think that that's one of the big strengths of the Magic community and as a game and Commander specifically, but all formats, bringing people together with a shared interest to do something together as a community. And so
it's true.
I love Magic conventions and I think they're great.
I love that you have that background. That's so cool. I kind of like was a chaperone for Comic-Cons in the past because my brother was super into them. And I would go in sometimes to like look at Magic stuff because occasionally they would have that. But this was the first time where I took the whole weekend off and just was hanging out at the Magic Summit all weekend. And I'm hooked. I think I'm a con person now because it was so fun. And yeah, I'm really glad that it happened in the city I live in. So it was a great like gateway for me. And now I'm already kind of like planning trips out to the next Magic convention. So
that's wonderful.
I'm in it now.
You're hooked.
I definitely am hooked. Also speaking of your deck, Giada, Fonts of Hope. I wanted to say that New Capenna is really cool I feel like so many cool commanders came out of this. And Giada's got to be one of the coolest because angels are... I can relate a little bit because they're similar to demons, which is kind of what I'm into, in that all of the demons and angels are like super high mana cost. And it's hard to just kind of have one of those randomly as your commander because I don't know how to say it, but it's hard to have like an 8 mana commander that you're like hyped to play and then it just gets killed because people know it's coming. But Giada's like the perfect example of a commander for angels that like helps them in ways that they need help because it gives you mana to get your big angels out. So
I think that's like exactly what kind of drew me to having her as a commander. I think there's definitely that balance between, having a commander that facilitates your strategy and building your deck too much around a commander. And so I think that it can always kind of, treading that balance between being overly dependent on your commander while still letting your commander facilitate and really drive the strategy of the deck. And I think that Giada is just such a good commander. A white mana dork? That's amazing already. And having such a low mana cost herself, she's easy to get out as well as recast because people will inevitably try to kill her. And I think... and then with the added benefit of adding 1/1 counters to all the subsequent angels you play is just so cool. She's just such a good commander. And so I mentioned briefly that I built it because I had already been looking for a commander to build an angel deck around. And so as soon as I saw the card, I was like, yes, this is happening. I built 3 decks with commanders from New Capenna because I just loved the vibes. And so I think both thematically as well as mechanically, I was really into Giada as a commander. Although the deck has changed a lot as I've gotten better. And then also just with the games that I've played, I found that a lot of the time when people want to play on Spell Table or they want to have me on their Spell Table streams, they're looking for that high-powered casual game. And so I love CEDH, but that's kind of a separate pot. And so when you're playing casual Commander on stream or with groups, lots of people love that kind of sweet spot of it's a high-powered deck, but it's still casual Commander. And so I've been sort of playing around and getting this deck to be a fun deck to play. So it has some stacks pieces, but not too many. So it's still fun. And, kind of finding that balance of what's a fun deck to play to hopefully win, but also fun for people who are playing me. And so I've kind of had fun. Also, it's tricky when there's specific angels that are just really expensive. And I think a lot of factions or a lot of decks run into this. I know when I was building my dragon deck, I was like, why are these dragons so expensive?
Yeah.
Why do I only want expensive dragons? And so there were definitely angels I really wanted that were a little pricier. And so it's been a deck that's evolved over time as I've been able to get pieces I want for it and kind of find things that synergize well. And I also just love shiny things. And so I've been slowly swapping out all my lands to be, now they are all the full art foil New Capenna lands. It took some time, but I now have like all full art foil New Capenna for the basic planes, as well as, all the other kind of fun lands in there to help do things. I was able to get the Pride Secret Lair, so I have that Soul Ring. And so this is definitely the deck that I put my pretty cards in. Like, this is, I want to get the foil, or, the full art Smothering Tithe, just the ones that I put the really pretty ones. Or if I get the secret layers, like I loved the Kamigawa Secret Lair. And so I have the Kamigawa Secret Lair for the Ghostly Prison, as well as one of the other lands. And so this is definitely the deck that has evolved and gotten more beautiful as I've played it and as I've found cards to put in to make it more beautiful and stronger.
I love that. It's your baby.
I like to win. Yeah, this is a fun baby deck. It's up there with like my CEDH deck for the ones that I've poured a lot of money into.
Yep. Yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, Secret Lairs have been kind of awesome for that because, some of them I'm just like, I can't resist this. The Pride Secret Lair, I literally got 4 copies of it. I was like, I'm going to use these and I'm going to love it.
I totally relate. It was announced and I got probably 4 or 5 separate DMs from people like, Anna Margaret, have you seen this? And then I was like, yes, I've seen it now and I need it.
It's so good. Yeah, I love it. And I think I love that one of your like favorite decks is a mono white deck because I just think mono colored commander decks deserve more respect than they get. And I've done a series, it's been a little while, but I've done a series on this podcast where I've gone through every monocolor and like talked about just like kind of general strengths and weaknesses of kind of how to like build a commander deck that way. And some of the things you've said are exactly the same things that I kind of discovered while I was doing the mono white episode, which are things like having those stacks pieces is actually kind of important to mono white because it's one of white's strengths is kind of like trying to shut down your opponents. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of one of the big arguments we had in that episode, was that if you're playing a mono white deck, you should just kind of like lean into that a little bit. And I know especially some angels have those kinds of effects on them already. So yeah, it makes sense.
A lot of the angels have stacks on them, but I think that there really is a balance, and it comes down to good rule zero conversations. I found that as long as I'm transparent and I say, hey, I'm playing angels, I've got some light stacks and I'm trying to play as many angels as quickly as possible. And people are like, okay, cool. That's what you're doing. Sweet. And so I think as long as you're honest and you're open about what your deck does and you don't try to like hide something and then sneak it in later, I think people can be understanding. I think stacks can also feel really frustrating to people if they can't do anything. And so I try to make sure that any stacks pieces I have don't shut down the board completely. They people can still play and they can still counter and still interact, but it just helps me a little bit.
Yep. I love it. Yeah, that's exactly it. I've been very happy with how Rule Zero conversations went at the summit, because I was a little nervous about that. My usual play groups kind of just, we have such a solid understanding of each other that our Rule Zero conversations are very easy. But yeah, I was a little nervous to do that with brand new people. And yeah, I was happy to see that like a lot of games we played pre-cons, so it was kind of naturally balanced that way. But then the games outside of that also, like every game I played started with a cool Rule Zero conversation about everyone's decks, and people said things exactly like you just said, which really helped a lot. So yeah, I love that it seems like you've got this deck to a really good place where it does have that balance, and you can communicate that to your opponents.
I hope so. I think it's funny. At DreamHack, actually, there were people who hadn't brought commander decks, but they wanted to play Magic, and so I'm totally into letting people borrow my decks. But it is really funny to play against your own deck.
Yeah,
and it was fun. It was fun to see my Angel deck really pop off, but someone else playing it, I'm like, oh no, I have to respond.
Yeah, it's like, I'm trying to win, but I'm also kind of proud of you winning.
Yeah, exactly. I did win, but I was like, oh no. Although I won one of them. I think I lent somebody else my deck, and I totally lost the second time. But again, you can't be too mad when you built the deck they won.
Yep.
Like, okay.
I love that. Yeah, that's really fun. I'm also I love that you were able to get some commander in at DreamHack. That's really cool. Oh, I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit, but do you have anything else you want to talk about when it comes to this deck's history, or any like maybe notable changes you've made to it?
Oh, I feel like I talked a lot about it, but I think
yeah.
I guess I just sort of naturally answered your question there without meaning to.
Smooth transition.
I feel like I chatted about that a lot, but I've made it more beautiful.
Yes, yeah.
I've swapped in stronger cards as I found them, and I'm a very competitive person, and so I was really into board games before Magic. So people joked, they're like, we were surprised you weren't into Magic already. Like, you're so into art and games. How did that take so long? And so I think that it's hard for me to not want to make every deck as strong as possible. And so I've let myself really lean into upgrading this deck and a few other decks, leaving some more. Because I think it's good to have a variety of different power levels, especially as you play with more people. It lets you play more games, and that's fun.
Yeah, I'm also a board game person, and that's why Commander is my favorite. I get kind of the most like board game vibes from a game of Commander. Yeah,
it's interesting because like I think of the constructed formats, Commander is my favorite, but overall I think drafting is my favorite because it feels just like Dominion, which was my favorite game before Magic. And so I feel like every time you do a draft, it's literally like playing Dominion, and I love Dominion, and I think that I was surprised, and I think some people were surprised too at how quickly drafting came to me. But I was like, this is just like Dominion. And so I don't know. I think drafting or Commander are my favorites too.
Yeah, I've kind of some of those games like Dominion and other kind of like drafting games, or games that are a little similar to Magic, have kind of been ruined because I'm just like, I could just be playing Magic right now. So I love it. Like, it's great, but my board game selection has definitely kind of transitioned into board games that are just like so different from Magic that I can't, my brain can't make that comparison. But yeah.
Interesting. I don't know. There are so many amazing board games.
It's true.
But I think you can make a comparison. I guess, I don't know, maybe if you're looking for it. But I feel like Magic has so many interesting elements to it. It's like you can see bits in all games.
It's true.
Yeah. If you look hard enough. So don't look too hard so you could enjoy the other games.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'll definitely keep having my Captain Sonar nights where we can just scream about each other's submarine locations.
I'll have to look that one up. I don't know that one.
It's a good one. Yeah, I think you would like it a lot because it appeals to my like engineering side really nicely in that you have your like little role on your team and you're trying to sink the opponent's submarine before they sink yours, but each person on your team has like a different role on the ship. They have to do these little tasks, and I don't know why I'm explaining the rules to Captain Sonar, but I think you would like it a lot because it kind of the like scientific background in me just like loves the gameplay of that. So
oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. I just wrote it down.
Okay, perfect.
We'll look it up.
Okay, and so back to your Giada deck. Uh-oh. What are the goals of this deck? What are you trying to achieve when you sit down to play it?
Well, I think anytime I sit down and play a deck, my goal is to make sure that the people I'm playing with have fun. I think that that's one of the awesome parts about Commander is that it is a social format. My secondary goal is to win because I am a very competitive person. And so with this particular deck, you win by combat damage. And so I built this deck to be very fast. And so my goals are to play as many angels as quickly as possible and then just hit people with a lot of flying combat damage quickly.
Yep.
And so I think that lots of creature heavy decks are super susceptible to board wipes. And so while I do have things in the deck to protect my creatures or to stop from getting wiped by a board wipe or to bring them back from the graveyard if I do lose angels, I have found that the quicker I can finish a game, the more likely I am to win. And so my goals are often to just play as many angels as possible, as quickly as possible.
I like it. Yeah, that's also, I love what you said. It's beautiful that your number one priority is to make sure everyone else is having fun. That's a great way to look at it. And then, of course, to win after that. So.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, like, realistically, you're only going to win, like, a small percentage more than 25% of the time. Like, right. You're not going to win all too often. Although I have found that when you're playing an aggro deck, you have much better odds one-on-one. So if I'm just playing with my husband, I will win most of the time just because I love aggro strategies. And so I've had to branch out and build other types of decks as well. Just because it's a different dynamic when you have two people versus having four. And so certain strategies, I think, do play better the fewer people you have. And conversely, some strategies play better when you have more people. And so it kind of depends, but...
Yeah. And I do think you mentioned that like board wipes are something that this deck might have a weakness to, but I love that you are in mono white. So you've got a lot of options for protection that like hopefully you have at the right time in your hand.
Exactly.
And like white is fantastic at that. So it seems like this is just going to be really strong. Like Giada does everything you want your commander to be doing to help support your angels, and then white kind of helps protect them once you get them out. And looking at this list of creatures also is kind of horrifying to me. There's some really strong angels.
Angel-like friends. There's a few in there that aren't angels, but they just need to be there.
I'm always a fan of seeing Elish Norn in a mono white deck. I think that you can never go wrong.
She even kind of looks like an angel if you squint. If you squint a little bit, you can be like, oh yeah, she fits in sort of.
It's true. Like from a distance, you're like, oh wow, look at this magnificent creature, and then you get closer, and it's like,
oh goodness,
you're not gonna live very long after that. But I love it, and I am a fan of any deck that is running Bruna and Gisela. That meld.
Oh my gosh. I've successfully melded them once and it was so exciting. It was funny because I successfully melded them in a game. I took pictures. I sent it to everybody I knew. And then the next day we went to go see Hadestown, but my sister hadn't been at the game when I had successfully melded them. And so I proceeded to spend a lot of intermission telling my sister all about how I had melded the two in Commander the game before. So despite being at Hadestown, which was amazing, a phenomenal musical, I was very excited by melding them. I was like, yes, I've only done it once though. I don't know how that's happened. They are good separately as well. Like it's still, they're still both great. They're still great pieces of the deck, but I have only melded them the one time.
Yeah, and I feel like every time it happens, it's like it's still just as cool as the first time. So, yeah.
Well, and it's great too because they technically, like, when they meld, that is another angel entering the battlefield, and so you do get counters on it for the other angels present. So it's kind of fun.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't realized that. So it's like even a little bit better in this deck than in all of the decks I play it in. Kind of force it in.
I mean, that's one reason why I love having things with Myriad here. And so I don't have too many. I do have the artifact that can give Myriad. And so I think that works super well as the an angel that has Myriad. But all of the different copies that enter gets counters based off of the other angels there. And so they get bigger as you go around. And so it's really, it's quite fun. Myriad works very well in this deck, and it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Bruna has the ability you can return an angel or human from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Exactly.
And in all of the decks that I kind of force these two in, they're pretty much only going to be targeting, like, Bruna will only be targeting Gisela. But in this deck, you've literally got like 30 angels that you could be reviving with that. So
yes. And then they come in and, like, so Bruna comes in, gets counters, and then you pull the thing directly from the graveyard and it will get counters on it that include Bruna being on the graveyard. And so it's great to get some of your pivotal angels, or the ones that have the great stacks pieces, that help, or protection, help you in.
That's so cool. I love it. I think any deck that can, like, capitalize on those two, and they seem perfect in here with Giada. I hadn't even thought about all of that. That's really cool.
Mirror Entity is one that is technically an angel, but
yes.
it's a fun way to win with this deck, because it's super fun because you can make all your creatures have a base power and toughness of, whatever amount of mana you pay, and then the counters stack on top of that.
That is so cool.
And so since this deck leans into the counter theme because of Giada, it works out really well.
Yeah, that's perfect. So you've got these like a whole board of angels that are already pretty big and scary, and have, like, all of them have pretty scary effects. And then they're just getting bigger and bigger with your commander and things like Mirror Entity. That's so cool.
Although something that was really interesting is I did have to pull some angels I really loved just to make sure that I had a realistic mana curve of angels. Because I really wanted to be able to play angels throughout the entire game and play them quickly. And so I wanted to put in a lot of those lower mana angels as well, which meant that I had to pull some of the larger angels that I might really want in the deck just to make sure that I would have angels to play. And so I think it kind of forced me to look at some of the lower mana value angels and put them in, but I think I actually really like a lot of them, and so I think it's fun.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I think up until probably the last couple years-ish, there really, like, weren't any angels under like 5 mana or 4 mana. So yeah, it seems stuff like Youthful Valkyrie or Starnheim Aspirant. It looks like a lot of these are from Kaldheim. It's really cool to see, like, angel stuff that you can play, like, lower on the curve.
There's some cool ones that came out came out in, like, the last few sets, like, very recently. I guess I may have pulled it. I'm looking now. There was one in the D&D set that was pretty cool, but I guess I took it out. Oops.
I do really like Angelic Sleuth as a card, and also a concept, an angel advisor. It says, whenever another permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, investigate. So
exactly.
If one of your angels gets murdered, then you have a sleuth on the case who's an angel to come find out what happened. Yes.
I recognize that people like to kill angels because they can feel like threats. And so I tried to put in some things to be like, well, I know I'm going to lose them. I want to put things to get them back, as well as I just put it in. There's this new, oh gosh, is it an enchantment? It's called, oh gosh, I hope I updated my list to have it. I don't know, but there's this new card I just recently put in that I'm super into that lets you move counters. Oh, no, it's right here. It's an enchantment. It's called Resourceful Defense. Whenever
Oh,
a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on a target permanent you control, which is so cool because if your angels have a lot of counters on them and they leave the battlefield, you can move those counters onto a different permanent, be it a different angel or even a different permanent that's not destroyed by a board wipe. And then you can pay
Ooh.
5 to move any number of counters from a target permanent you control to another target permanent you control. So I've been able to move all my counters to a permanent that's not getting board wiped and then pay 5 to put them all back.
That's so cool. Okay. That's funny because I thought you were talking about a card that is recent that moves counters around that I know about because of my sagas deck. I move like the lore counters around on the sagas.
Okay, wait, now I might need to look up this card, see if it fits in the deck. But no, that's interesting. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, this was a recent addition that I just put in, and I've already gotten to use it, which was exciting. I made some upgrades between 2 conventions I attended, and this was one that I pulled and then thought, I'll stick it in. And I've been happy with it. So I think it's going to stick around.
Yeah, this one seems great in this deck. And it's kind of funny how the wording like makes it sound like other cards similar to it, but when you really look at it, like you don't get to have opportunities to just move counters onto any permanent. It's usually like move your +1/+1s onto a different creature or something like that. So yeah, just like you said, being able to hide all of your counters on like a Smothering Tithe or something, or like a land even, that's really cool. And then you can put them back. Yeah. I also have this card in my Sagas deck for kind of a similar thing.
No, that sounds perfect. It totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty wild in that deck. So yeah, that makes total sense here. I love cards like that. It's like protection that you wouldn't really expect. It's not like Teferi's protection. It's like a different kind of protection that's very specific to this deck, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, are there any other kind of like notable cards that you want to shout out that fill generic roles like card draw or mana ramp or removal or anything like that?
Just shout out some specific cards. Well, one thing that's kind of fun is I have been able to I put in Halo Fountain, which I love. I have actually won with Halo Fountain, but not in this deck. I won with Halo Fountain in my Ginny Fae deck, which was very exciting.
Nice.
But I put it in because I thought thematically it was just so perfect. I definitely will lean into theme over mechanics if it comes down to it, just because I love the lore of Magic, and I think that if I can have something that fits thematically, I'll do it. I'm happy with. I think that sometimes white doesn't always have great card draw, and so I know when I first built this deck, I did struggle with some card draw. So I put in different things to help out with that. One thing I put in is a background, and so it's an enchantment called Folk Hero. So commander creatures you own have, whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw a card. It only triggers once per turn, but I found that that's really great for card draw, and it's a very inexpensive enchantment, just costing 1 and 1 white. And so that's pretty great. And as long as Giada's out, you can draw a card when you play an angel, which is nice. And
you're going to be doing that all the time anyway, so that's perfect.
Yeah. Because the goal is to play angels, which is fun. I also put in Endless Atlas, so you can pay 2 to tap and draw a card as long as you control 3 or more lands with the same name. And since this is a monocolor deck, I will frequently. I should always. I mean, unless I completely draw no mana and I biff it, I should have 3 of the same land. And so I definitely wanted to put in some card draw there. I also think it's kind of fun when you're I have an angel that can let me draw cards. And so anytime that I can get the benefits I want and have it on an angel that fits my theme, I think that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really love that you are playing Court of Grace in this deck also for card draw. This is I'm a huge fan of the Monarch anytime I can get it, and so I love
the Monarch.
Yes, it's so fun.
Well, I think it helps, and I think often when you're playing like an aggro deck, you will stay the Monarch because as long as, you have defenders and you're the one attacking and you can attack to get it back, that extra card draw at the end of your turn can make a huge difference. And then if you also happen to be able to make a 4/4 white angel creature token, that's great too.
That's still pretty good. Yeah, I think it's great in this deck because 95% of your creatures fly, so they're going to be like the best blockers ever, and it's going to be hard for people to take the monarchy away from you. So that seems like great card draw in this.
Yeah, so I feel like that works really well. I think another thing that white sometimes struggles with is mana ramping, and I think that Giada herself is great for this because she's a mana dork that lets you get a white to play angels. I think that works out super well. I also there's cards like Smothering Tithe or Smuggler's Share that can help get some mana. Yeah, I stuck in some expensive mana cards as well. This is the deck with I have one mana crypt, but it floats back and forth between this and my Edgar Markov CEDH deck.
Ooh,
depending
nice.
on what I'm playing, because mana makes a difference, and being able to play it quickly can help. Anytime there's a lot of different ways I can get Giada out turn 1, and that typically sets me up for success.
That's incredible. If you can get it out turn 1, and then you're just going to have so much mana on turn 2.
It's great.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think I love ramping in Commander. That's just something that, like, playing things earlier than they're meant to be, it's just so satisfying to me. And I can't be mad if someone else is doing it and playing, I don't know, Angelic Arbiters or Avacins. Like, that's just cool. I will be a fan of that every time.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, I guess Esper Sentinel's another way I like to draw cards. I think that it's a lot of fun. And I think that being able to put in different creature cards too that can help you go fetch planes and get more mana can help.
Yeah, looking through the deck, it definitely, like, you're not short on ways to ramp. And I love that a lot of these are white too. Like, you've definitely leaned into playing cards that feel like they would go with the angel theme, like Smothering Tithe, and Smuggler's Share seems great too. Yeah, I like it. I'm always a fan of trying to find kind of spicier ways to do stuff in a deck, and playing a mono white deck, you kind of have to get creative when you're doing those things. So yeah, it's cool. And besides the cards that you're playing to be, like, responsible as a deck builder, do you have any pet cards in this deck that you might be playing even though they're not as good as they could be?
I have a lot of some of my pet cards have come out. I still have Sigarda's Splendor. I had Sigarda's Grace just because thematically it was so pretty, but I never ended up playing it, just because by the time I had the mana to cast it, I was typically in a position where I'd rather cast an angel.
That makes sense.
And so I think I took that one out just because I didn't end up casting it as much. I mentioned, I think Halo Fountain actually works well in this deck, but it definitely was a card that I was like, oh my gosh. And like Giada, sacrifice, I like her background and her story was that she was actually basically sisters, or like adopted sisters within the Cabaretti family with Jenny Faye, which is another deck I built, and I cosplayed her. And so she, produced Halo and let them throw all these big parties. And so I think any way I could tie her story in, I was like, yes, need this card in the deck. And so I think maybe that one doesn't necessarily help as much as others, but I like it a lot. So it's still in there. I guess there's some cards that I've put in that I keep thinking, like, this will work. Like, this is going to be great. And they maybe haven't panned out yet, but I still think that they're going to. Like, Luminarch's Ascension is one that I'm sure is going to be fantastic. It always gets destroyed, like, as soon as as soon as I get enough quest counters on it to start making 4/4 angels for 2 mana, people are like, oh no, we need to remove that. And so it's never panned out for me exactly, but I do think then that's forced people to spend their removal on my enchantments rather than other things I have on the board. And so I don't think it's ever hindered me. And I'm sure it's gonna work. Sometime it's gonna be like, yep, that was it. I guess a pet card that's maybe not the strongest that I'm really into and I've had fun with is Radiant Grace. It's a very inexpensive. It's a cheap card to buy, but I have a foil version of it, and so that's why I originally put it in. It was in my very first draft of this deck because I just needed to like fill things in, and then I guess I've played it so much at this point that I just keep it in the deck because I like it. And so basically you can enchant a creature and the enchanted creature gets +1/0 and has vigilance, and when it dies, when that creature dies, you can return Radiant Grace to the battlefield transformed. Ooh. And so you can curse your opponents and all their creatures enter tapped. And so it's pretty situational, but it has helped me, so I keep it in.
Yeah, and for 1 mana, it's kind of like a threat, too. Like, you put it on one of your big angels, and you're like, well, if you remove it, then I'm going to curse you, so just don't remove it, right?
Exactly. And I think vigilance is so thematic for angels.
Yeah.
That there's other angels that can give all your other angels vigilance, but being able to give something big vigilance is nice.
Yep. Very cool.
And it also just feels so thematic. Radiant Grace. I don't know. Yeah. I like it. So maybe that's one. If I had to pick a pet card, that might be it.
That's perfect. Yeah.
I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes you don't think about what cards are your pet cards until you get asked, and then you're like, oh yeah, nobody else really plays Radiant Grace, but it's like one of my favorite cards to play. So.
I love it. No, it's definitely it's a fun card. Yeah, there's a lot of cards that I just like a lot. In this deck, I love Herald of War. All my cards that let my angels cost less, I'm like, yes. And Herald of War just gets out of control so fast because angel and human spells cost 1 less to cast for each 1/1 counter on Herald of War. And so Herald of War will already typically, when I play it, come out with counters on it because I'll cast it when Giada's on the field. So it'll get a counter for every angel that's already in play. But then every time it attacks, it gets another 1/1 counter. And so it's great making your angels cost much less than they would normally. And so then you can just like flood the board with angels.
That's kind of absurd. Yeah. I don't
Herald
think...
of War is like MVP sometimes. Because like if you think about it, like if you have Giada and at least say conservatively 1 other angel on the board, it'll already come out with 2 1/1 counters. And so the subsequent angel you play will already cost 2 less. After it attacks, all your angels cost 3 less. And so if you're looking, at Avacyn that costs like 5 and 3 white, Herald of War can very quickly have 5 counters on it. And then Avacyn costs 3.
I'm already so scared of Avacyn at 8 mana. I can't even imagine an Avacyn at 3 mana.
Well, yeah. Or think about like Resolute Angel. If, it's 5 and 2 white, but that can reset your life total back to your starting life total. Oof. And so as long as you've got, Herald of War or some of the other things, I have a few other things in the deck that make angels cost less. But being able to get that out cheaply, just kind of reset your life total. And it's nice. So that might be another pet card.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, this is exactly why I like these episodes, is because I don't know a lot about angels, but I'm really loving how it looks like angels work really well with each other. Like, they all have kind of effects that help other angels do their thing also. And yeah, it's really cool to see that there is clearly so much power going on in angels. Do you have a like all-time favorite angel, or is it just kind of, or is that like an evil question that's too hard to pick?
Oh, I think Giada's my favorite. I feel like that she's got, I like her story. I really like New Capenna. And she's my commander, so I think Giada's my favorite.
Makes sense. And I just love how it's like a 2 mana 2/2 with flying and vigilance, and also like 8 more lines of rules text that do cool stuff. That's just like...
And partner that with like cool transparent stained glass wings and an awesome song. that's based on her. Like, she has a song. Not many of these other angels have songs. Like, her and Elspeth have songs. And so I think yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Giada for sure.
That makes sense. I love it. Okay. So I usually ask what the MVP of the deck is, or just like the card that if you draw it, it's gonna be like very quick to win afterwards. Do you have a card like that in mind, or is it could be one that we've already talked about too?
Well, I think that the obvious answer for the MVP is my commander, Giada. I think she's the MVP of the deck, but I do think that there are some times when you pull something and you think like, oh, okay, I'm just I'm in great shape. I think that Imria Shepherd, well, it depends on what point of the game I'm in, but Imria Shepherd's one I'm always excited to see if I've been in a position where a lot of things have gone to my graveyard, just because being in a mono white deck, most of the lands I'm playing are plains. So when she's on the field, she has this great landfall ability. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return a target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If that land is a plains, you may return it to the battlefield instead.
Whoa.
And so that's great. I love it when she comes up. I already mentioned this as well, but I think Herald of War is a card that can just really turn on this deck. And it just can explode with making your angels cost so much less.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it's cool to see that a lot of the angels are kind of like you said, good at different points of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely do think it matters, like what point of the game. I think another card, and I mentioned this briefly, Blade of Selves, being able to give an angel myriad is, I think, incredibly powerful, and even more so with Giada on the field. So then those additional angels coming in will get counters for the previous angels there. But I think that a weakness with aggro decks can be if somebody has a lot of defenders and you don't want to swing and potentially lose your creature, but you do really want to swing, so they're either forced to defend and lose their creatures or take it. And so I think being able to attack one person but then have the copies attack the other players is great. And so I'm always happy to see Blade of Selves come up, because I love attaching it to any angel creature.
Yeah, and there are a lot in here with like enters the battlefield effects that you can get a few different copies of from that. And yeah, some pretty spicy stuff I would be scared to see. I would be more than scared to see a Blade of Selves attached to some of these.
Yeah, but see, that's why it's so great. You want them.
Yes.
You want the Blade of Selves attached to the angels. That's exactly what you want. And so I think that might be. I try to not have. Well, some decks I think you have maybe one win condition, or like certain cards that for sure close the game. And so but I also try to recognize that if I only have one card that's going to close the game for me, people are going to definitely want to get rid of that card. And so I try to think of multiple paths to victory in every deck I build, and try to have multiple cards that I'd be thrilled to see. And I'm happy to see different cards at different points of the game. And I think this is one deck where I don't really have tutors in this deck. I'm not specifically tutoring for cards to win. On the flip side, like my Edgar Markov CDH deck, I run so many tutors.
Yep.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's more than 10, because I'm looking for those specific cards to win the game. And so I don't really do that in this particular deck. And so I don't know. I don't think that there's one specific card, but there's lots of cards I'm excited to see and that I want to see.
Yeah. I like that. That's how you know you built a deck that you'll just enjoy playing over and over and over again, because it'll be a little bit different each time, and every time you'll see different angels that you like. And then you've always got Halo Fountain as a backup if you need to.
I like it. I kept it in because I think it's a good card. And like I said, It's won me a game, just not with this particular deck.
Yes. Yeah, I'm super won over by the like full art version of this card.
Yes, I've got the full art foil in here because it's beautiful. And
I have a mono white tokens deck that loves this card. So I'm also a big fan of playing Halo Fountain whenever. And okay, so I am excited to hear your answer to this next question, which is, what has been your favorite in-game moment that you've had while you've played this deck?
Okay, so the cheating answer is when I melded, when I melded the two, when I was able to meld Bruna and Giada, I was just so excited. And kind of ironically, when I did this, I could have won the game, but instead I melded them. And so thankfully I was still able to win the game, but it was more iffy because through melding them, I basically lost one attacker because when they came back in, they had summoning sickness. And so I was no longer able to win the game.
Gotcha.
But I was like, I have to do it. Like, when is this going to come up again?
Oh,
and so my friends thought it was pretty funny that I would risk losing the game to meld them. But I'm like, no, I have to do this. Maybe another kind of fun moment with this deck was when I was playing with some of the awesome EDH Recast. And so I was on one of their streams, and math can be hard when people are watching you, but it was like a very tight game. And I think that my favorite Commander games are games where it's close and where everybody's deck gets to do something and gets to do its thing, you know?
Yeah.
You want your deck to do its thing. You want to be able to play cards. You want to be able to play Commander. And so this particular game, it was super swingy. Everybody's deck was doing what it was supposed to do. And I ended up winning by the exact amount of combat damage. And I think everybody in the chat was recounting it like 3 or 4 times. I was counting it. Like, we were all like, did I do it? And so I swung for the exact correct amount.
And you did it.
Combat damage to win. And so that was pretty fun too.
That's amazing. That has got to be one of the most satisfying ways to win a game of Commander is with exactsies.
Yeah. And I don't even know if that's happened to me other than that one time. Because it was kind of like, wow, okay, this is exactly right. Because I would have definitely lost on my next turn if it hadn't been.
I love that. That's so fun, especially on those EDH Trek guys.
They're so nice. Everyone in Magic is so nice. You're so nice.
It's true.
I'm blown away by how kind everybody is.
I love it. Yeah, that's honestly, I wouldn't be doing this podcast if everyone weren't so awesome and nice and so fun to talk to about Magic. And also, your story earlier was very relatable. I have definitely thrown a few games to meld Brazella.
Yes!
But I say that is a victory better than actually winning. So
no, I completely agree. I think that is the real victory, having your deck do the thing.
Anytime I get to make people look at that shockingly horrifying art on the back of that melded card is a victory for me. So yeah, it's always worth it.
And their story is just so tragic.
Yes.
I feel like just how emotional that story is makes it even more satisfying when you can, I guess, be evil and do it. But anyway, it's so fun. I also love that there's so many new meld cards in Brothers War.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been an Innistrad person. I love horror movies and that kind of thing. So yeah, meld was one of those things. Every time somebody would be like, what kind of mechanics do you want to see in returning in upcoming sets? Every time I would always say meld, please bring meld back.
Oh, nice. So you must have been thrilled with all the new meld
So
cards.
excited. Yep. Yeah, I'm already building the meld Mishra as a commander, and yeah, I'm really excited to get some more meld action. There's something about There's something so nice about having a giant card that's twice the size of everyone else's on your side of the battlefield.
No, I completely agree. I actually, probably the highlight of Magic 30 for me was I got to walk around with one of, with Light, who's the creative director for Wizards of the Coast, and pass out uncut sheets of Magic cards to people. So we got to pick families and we got to surprise them with uncut sheets. And so it was probably the highlight of the entire convention. There was one younger boy, and when we gave him this uncut sheet of the full art foil lands, his jaw literally dropped. Even with his mask on, you could see his jaw drop. And I thought my face was going to split from smiling. I got to chat with the sweetest younger girl. And so she was still learning how to read, and she was there with her older brother. And so her older brother only got to come to the convention for that Sunday, towards like the second half of Sunday. And so we surprised them with this full sheet, and her brother started crying. It was so much fun. But then afterwards, I was surprised, and they gave me the uncut sheet of all the meld cards. And so it's actually hanging up behind me because I got it framed, and I freak out about it. So no, I think that melding cards is just the coolest thing, and it's such a fun mechanic.
Okay, we definitely have that in common, and you will for sure need to send me a picture of that uncut sheet. That's so cool.
It was so fun. It was such a highlight and such a surprise.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel like
incredible.
I want to make all of the meld decks now. I'm like, ooh, do I need to make all three? Like, how do I do
mean, they all seem pretty fun. Urza, it seems right up your alley with the power level. So, yeah, I think you should go for it. I don't know if that's responsible, but I will.
No, it's good encouragement.
Yes.
I feel like.
Okay, so we've reached our final question for this interview, and that is, what advice would you give to players who maybe they're interested in Giada or an Angels deck, or they just like your outlook on Commander? What kind of advice would you give those people?
Ooh, well, advice that I find that whenever people ask me for advice, the first thing I always jump to is do what makes you happy. I think that one of the most beautiful things about Magic is that it's so creative, and people might really love building decks, or they might really love playing decks. And I think that it's great to lean into what makes you happy. And so Commander is unique a little bit in that you have more room for creativity because you can only have one copy of each card other than basic lands. And so there's just so much room for your personality to shine. And so if this is something that interests you, I think really leaning into the parts about it that interest you and what you find fun. And that might mean looking on other people's deck lists and cobbling it together because you rather play a deck than make it. Or it might mean that you're super into angels and you really want to showcase your personality in the types of angels you pick and what you're into. Or maybe you really want to lean into the stacks elements. And so I think that if you're interested in building a Giada Font of Hope deck, first of all, do it. And second, have fun and make something that you enjoy playing and that you'll want to play.
Period. I love that. That's perfect advice, honestly. I have nothing to add. You nailed it. That's great.
Yes, that Masters of Education is coming in handy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how I want to be building decks, and that's something I want to be thinking about. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you also for spending a little over an hour with me talking about Magic. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Honestly, I'm so impressed by how thoughtful you are, both with your questions and guiding the discussion and your outlook on Magic. And I think I'm so lucky that we happen to have our first game of Commander together at Magic Summit, and I've claimed you now as a friend. So you're stuck with me.
Okay, I'm happy to be stuck here. So that's perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. That's really nice of you to say. And I'm really glad that the summit went that way. It was the perfect way to kick off a really fabulous weekend with you playing Commander. I just appreciate you. Definitely friends. And I can't wait to play against you at the next event that I inevitably go to because I'm hooked.
Yes.
And as we kind of wrap things up, will you tell everyone out there what you've got going on, where they can find you and follow you, and plug any cool stuff you have coming out?
Sure. So you can find me as It's Anna Margaret everywhere online. ITS Anna Margaret. I'm all over the internet. And so right now we're hitting the end of the year. I'm wrapping up my big project. I made a calendar. And so this is my second year making a calendar. And basically it's like fine art photography, but fantasy. And so I designed 12 original cosplays and I photograph them and edit. I lay out the calendar myself. It's such a huge project and it's really fun. And I'm so thrilled. and I'm getting close to selling out. So I guess if you want a calendar, act quickly. And so that's my big project that I'm wrapping up. And going into the new year, I have a few different conventions that have reached out to me. So I'm definitely going to be at a few different conventions. I'll announce those as they get closer. But yeah, reach out if you want to chat about magic or cosplay. You can see all of my cosplays posted on my Instagram. And I make videos for YouTube and TikTok as well. So you can find me everywhere.
Perfect. And I will have links to all of those things that you just said down in the episode description. So yeah, make it super easy for everyone to click on those and find you, and definitely purchase a calendar because I've seen your posts about it on social media and it looks incredible. So definitely do that. And yeah, and thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. And for the Faerie Conclave for me, you can find my links down below as well. I'm also freshly hot off the presses, a Dragon Shield affiliate. So I'll include an affiliate link down below if you need some Dragon Shield stuff, which we all know is the best stuff for your Magic cards. So definitely go buy some sleeves. Okay, I think that's all for me. So thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you all next time.